Hello and welcome to Model Kit Stuff, and today's first impressions we are looking at the mother of all modern warships, HMS Dreadnought. So HMS Dreadnought was launched in 1906, although the kit we're reviewing here is of her in her 1918 configuration at the end of the First World War. But on her launch in 1906, she changed everything. I don't think there's ever been a warship that had an impact on naval design in the same way that HMS Dreadnought did. HMS Dreadnought, she not only launched a naval arms race, but she had such an impact on the world when she came and hit the oceans that she had the first steam turbines. She was the fastest warship afloat, the first sort of organised main batteries rather than lots of heavy secondary guns. She started what we would consider to be modern battleships, and as such, all ships that came after her became called dreadnoughts. She wasn't just a class lead, she changed everything, and every other warship that got designed after her was inspired by her, and that continued until the end of battleship design. And obviously ships that had been running just up to her, steel ships, became pre-dreadnoughts. So she marked a moment in time when everything changed, and when British naval design was leading the charge on how warships would develop going forward into the future. It's difficult to underestimate what a huge revolutionary change she made to naval design at that time. Now, in terms of her career, there isn't really much to report. She dodged the Battle of Jutland, which is the main battle she could have been at in her lifetime, and her only real engagement was ramming a German U-boat. So there isn't really much to report. She didn't have a glorious career, but like some of the best warships, actually her presence and her being was actually what she contributed. It's a statement of power, like HMS Warrior before her, like HMS Hood after her. It's about here's a presence, this is our power, and applying that power globally, so that people don't mess with your trade routes and engage your navies. So it was really about as much about peacekeeping and a statement of being a major player on the global stage, as it was about sinking other ships in combat. So in that respect, she absolutely did a job. Ironically, her launch triggered such an arms race that we ended up with the German Grand Fleet as we approached the First World War of very modern, up-and-coming warships, and pretty much anything the British Navy did, the French Navy was always hot on the heels or trying to better. So it did lead to more ships, more warships, and an arms race globally. You can even argue that countries like Japan built their imperial navy based on the arms race that came out of the launch of such a very different warship to what was already out there. Okay, with all of that said, what we have here is a kit of HMS Dreadnought pretty much towards the end of her life. She was in the Grand Fleet at the time of 1918, having been on coastal duties for a period of time. And this is only a couple of years before she was scrapped. So what we will see here is her most modernised configuration, rather than as she was when she was launched. But let's have a look at what we get. So the box has some nice artwork of her steaming away. It looks like another ship in the background might be of the same class. A bit difficult to know. The mast is a bit different on that one. But yeah, a nice sort of North Atlantic picture, I guess. On the side, we have the typical trumpeter layout. We have a little bit of history. We have a bird's eye view of the ship, and you can see the armament arrangement there. The sides both emulate what we've got on the front, and we have our kit number 05330. Tells us that it's a 1/350 scale kit, and then if we flip her over, we get our side profiles. Shows us that we get some photo etch, a little bit of health and safety notice. Yeah, so let's take a look inside. Inside, we get a fairly typical trumpeter affair. We've got a standard-looking instruction manual. Got a separate paint call out, and then our kit parts have been separated into various different individual bags. And then right at the bottom, we've got a separate bag with decals in and our photo etch. Let's start off by having a look at the instructions. So, usual looking trumpeter, A4 landscape stapled instruction book, as always, starting with a black and white profile. Then we have the little read before assembly section and our key on what we're going to be doing as we work through the instructions. Then we have our sprue map. You can see the sprue numbers on this, so it is helpful for cross-reference if parts get separated and you lose track of what they are. You can see there that we've got several sprues. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 sprues, a superstructure and a deck, 3 frets of photo etch, some chain, and a very small looking decal sheet. I already know I won't be happy with that. Okay, so step 1, interestingly, is not a load of sub-assemblies. So this is a nice, refreshing change from Trumpeter. They often do lots and lots of sub-assemblies that you've got to store for ages. It doesn't make any sense. What we've got is building up the main hull first, and we've got some supports there which have a deck support in, which is nice to see. And yeah, 2 halves, no waterline option. It's full hull only unless you want to do some cosmetic surgery yourself. We can see here that the deck needs some holes drilling in. As always, Trumpeter don't give you a diameter. So the tendency is to go with the size of the hole, the depression they've made on the underside, and then open it out if needs be. So I try and do them a bit undersized, so you've not got a gap in your deck when you've fitted the part. And then we've got some superstructure sub-assemblies, which we're clearly not using in the next section immediately. So already I'm saying you probably want to work through this and decide what your build process is, and you know what the stages you're going to do it, and make it work for you. Then the next thing we're making is we've got the forward deck there, because we can see the hawse pipes. So that must be marrying up to this raised deck section here, which then carries on into this superstructure. Looks like we've got some nice detail on there, and we've got quite a bit already moulded into the deck. So we've got things like the skylights already moulded in, and bulwarks there are already moulded in. Already got some photo etch going on. That looks like, yeah. Then we're adding that. So we seem to have a centre section of each page which has the build up of the main hull, and on either side of it we appear to then have sub-assemblies that we don't need just yet, which is a bit strange. So makeup of the funnels, we appear to have photo etch funnel tops with cages. So that's interesting at this scale. Don't often see the little walkways underneath, so that'll be interesting to see. Deck going in stops around about there, I guess, where that piece that we've just previously seen will then fit on top. Again, looks like there's quite a lot of stuff to be added to the deck, which is nice. Nice to see separate parts. I don't see any cable reels, so that's good. They're all separate. That's how I prefer it. Funnels are then being added to the structures that they come out of the top of. So 2 funnels, I think. And we've got some plastic walkways there. Okay, step 6 is starting to build one of the funnels. Step 7, we're adding the main deck into the hull. So we're continuing this strange way of working where we have a centre section which is actually progressing the build, and then sub-assemblies going on around the side of it. So that is starting to build the funnel. That's completing to build the funnel on its structure there. Nice to see we've got a little platform though, and some walkways, even though they're plastic. That looks fairly bereft of any detail, however. Then we flip over to 9, building the anchor. Step 10, we've got separate bilge keels, which is nice to see because they'll be nice and thin. People are divided on the separate ones. I don't mind them. Other people detest them. Then we've got 4 shaft lines and screws, twin rudders, so very much like you'll see on Second World War German ships and so on. The winches are made up of 2 parts, so they should look nice and detailed. And then we have some structure, and it shows the drill icon, make hole, but when you look closely at it, it wants us to use the famous Chinese square drills. Trumpeter like those square drills, they use them for quite a bit. Step 12, we're continuing with the second funnel. Step 13, we're going back to the superstructure and deck that we started way back at the start of the build with breakwaters and various davits and guns and capstans and what have you being added. So quite a lot of separate detail, which is nice to see. Some photo etch doors and ladders, which is nice detail. Then in step 14, we're back to the second funnel. And then in step 15, we're starting on more superstructure, this time including some staging structures for the ship's boats. So we're darting backwards and forwards all over the place. So you definitely need to cross out all these numbers and reprioritize everything in the way you would want to work and get the build flow correct for you. This is not untypical for Trumpeter. Then as we turn over step 16, again, we're putting a lot more parts into this one big area. There's a huge amount of detail going in here, which is lovely to see. So we've got separate boxes of various types, mushroom vents, search lamps, more deck guns, the winches that we'd made up before, you can see them labelled as A there, and some superstructure that's going in there to form some form of building. Then the little deck that we've made up is being mounted there, along with more deck area going in there. You can see the cover on those guns and things. And then that looks like a lot of posts going in to support more structure on top. Then we have another little superstructure sub-assembly being made up with what looks like a little domed roof. Step 18 now, and we've got another deck section which is going on top of this. So all of this is getting covered. So those little mushroom vents and things like that, they'll only be seen through these gun openings. So it's really nice that they've added that sort of detail. Because I'll be honest with you, if this was Tamiya, they wouldn't have bothered. So that's really nice to see. And then we've got some support structures going around in here. This is going to be really quite detailed. It's going to look very nice. And then the boat decks are going on top of that, so they'll stick on top of there. So those chocks, I can guarantee you they're going to be a bit chunky. We're going to want to try and replace those with photo etch, but we'll come to aftermarket once we've reviewed what's in the box. And then we're building up what to me looks like the bridge. I might be wrong, but that looks like bridge structure to me. So we've got a lower and upper deck being sandwiching this bridge area together. And then as we flip over to step 20, we've got a small structure there with a bit of photo etch going on, which is even more items going onto these decks. There's loads of stuff going on. We've got more searchlights, more deck guns, what look like flag lockers to me there, by the looks of them, and then some ready use lockers, cable or hose reels, spare anchor, and I'm not sure, they look like they could be signal flappers. Rather than supports. I might be wrong, they could be supporting another structure. Then we've got some more sub-assemblies, some more photo etch going on, building up a starfish. So what I thought was the bridge is now getting some more support structure going underneath it, and then that's got railings and bits and pieces going on. Well, that's interesting. They show it there with the railings already on, and there with the railings on, but you add the railings there, so it's a little bit out of sequence. But as always, you always look a bit forward in the instructions. But I would guess you're doing that before you're doing that. Then we have what looks like the base of the mast with its lifting arm. Swiveled on the base there, so very reminiscent of Hood. You can see the lineage in some of the areas that they've done here. We've got what looks like a binnacle, and this looks like an observation deck to me. Step 23, we're building up top masts and various different mast sections as sort of steps and sub-assemblies. So we're sort of stopping there and then starting that, but imagine it'll all come together in a minute. We've got little search lamp platforms going on. Nice to see we've got the photo etch ladders, and a smaller lamp there. Lots of photo etch, which is nice to see. Step 24, that looks like a tripod leg. I think that's the other tripod leg, so I'm guessing we've got a tripod mast system. More small parts going on there. It's absolutely cluttered, this ship, isn't it? And then we're back to this, even more stuff going on this deck. So we've got what looks like a filler piece there, like there was a window and or an opening of some type, and that's been closed off. So possibly it's there on the 1915 version or something like that. We've got some rafts being mounted. We've got some form of winch. The doors are photo etch, the little shutter doors for the gun port there. Photo etch ladders rather than plastic ladders, which I like to see. More photo etch doors, hose reels, some form of structure along the top there near those lamps. And then basically the same as we've got here being done again on the other side. So again, nice to see the positionings on both sides. These little shutter doors will add so much detail. Very nice to see. Step 27 now, and the first of our made up funnel sub-assemblies is going into place. And then we've got one of these smaller sub-assemblies going on. Not quite sure what they are, quite intrigued by those. We've got more little deck sections going in and the railings for them. So nice to see that we've got included railings. Tamia, what's yeah, definitely the bridge section there going in, and the observation deck seems to sort of manage to sort of make contact with that structure then, so we're sort of bridging that area there. Then we've got some form of structure at the back. It'd be interesting to find out what all these different rooms and things did. I'm sure we can find out. And then we've got a second funnel going down into this little T-shape here. So this structure actually drops down and goes beneath that deck, and I'm guessing it's the same here, though there's a little opening there, although it's not as easy to see. Then we've got some more sub-assemblies. Make 5, make 5, make 5. I'm not quite sure what they are. Might become clear when we see them being placed. Right, then we have, yeah, the tripod mast going in. So we've got mast going, is that just behind that building, is it? And then mast legs there, and trying to follow the arrows there. So main mast is just inside that little cutout there. Photo etch ladders, vertical and horizontal. Then one of the main guns, or at least 3 of them. I think there's 5, isn't there? 2, 4, yeah, 5 main guns. Right, so those little things that we had to make, 5 of each different type, they are going on the top of the guns. So I'm guessing there's some form of pressure ventilation, so that when you get the percussion from the main gun building up the pressure inside the turret, the pressure's got some way of escape. And then we've got deck guns going on and life rafts and some photo etch of some type there. On 30 steps. And this is why I divide my instructions up, because step 31 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 steps. For me, I divide them all up and make them 1 step each. It's just easier to see, easier to manage, because that's a complete boat in its own right. So's that, so's that, so's that, so's that. Wow, there's a lot of different boats here, isn't there? That's a different one. A10 base. Some of the bigger ones then have become steam launchers. So you know, and even that with the little separate chimneys means that they're not going to be oversized in their moulding. They should look right. So happy with that. We've got little photo etch rudders and bits and pieces. Should look the part when done. Step 23, and we're putting in the ship's boats before we put the rest of the mast in. So I'm quite glad to see them doing that, because I try and build centre up and out, but you don't want to be trying to stretch around all those masts and yards. So that's a nice little trick that they've done there, rather than having it moulded as one piece. So that's a little highlight. Then we've got some form of construction being built up there. I'm guessing that's for the secondary mast. It looks like a tripod we're building up there. We've got a little cable reel of some type. And again, the sequence is a bit odd. Is that first and then we go to that? Because it's there. I don't know. Western eye reading left to right, that looks a bit like it's in an odd place. Okay, step 34, we're building up a searchlight platform and some construction with what looks like the galley chimney, and that looks like ammunition loading hatches. And then, right, okay, and then that's going onto the top of the tripod for that secondary mast, or what I guess will be the secondary mast. And then we are completing the main mast there. More ship's boats going on at the same time, so on the other side. So obviously I do that before I add all that for the same reasons as we just mentioned. Then step 35, we're back to the hull and deck. And we're adding lots and lots of little photo etch plates across the deck, which are nice to see. So little small mounting plates. 36 is the same again on the other side. And then step 37, we start adding some deck furniture, as I like to call it. So we've got anchors there at the front. We'll have to have a look and see if we need to be drilling out pipe holes and what have you. So we've got jackstaff, deck guns, capstans, some form of davit, a little skylight box, more davits and bits, what looks some form of splinter shield, little bits and bobs. Step 38, more davits, a skylight. That's our little sub-assemblies that we built up a couple of pages ago. Loading hatch and galley chimney, and then more deck guns and support frame for the jackstaff. Step 39, we're putting the observation deck on there for the rear mast there, and then that big piece of work that we've been working on for most of the build is finally being attached in place. So that has got to fit really, really well, because there's no way you're filling and sanding with all that gear on. So for me, that gets put on and then these bits get built into it afterwards. Just the way I would work it. I know other people would do it differently, but you've got to be very confident that you've got a perfect fit that you can just glue into place for that to work like that. Then we have some, they look like boarding ladders to me, being built up, all of it out of photo etch. Step 41, and we're adding all 5 main guns. So when we saw that 3, we must have been doing a couple of pairs in there, I would think, as well, which I hadn't picked up on. Then we've got, now this is a nice touch, often missed, but we've got the name of the ship in photo etch, and sometimes that's a decal, but more often than not it's just missed totally. but it should always be on the stern there somewhere. So that is nice to see. Secondary breakwaters, flagstaff at the front, and yeah, quite an interesting little arrangement there for the gangway ladders, and not the usual straight down. It's got a little platform and what have you. I've not seen that before. That's step 41. Step 42, and we have looks like booms being fitted. They're all in an upright position, so that's a little unusual. And some form of davits for the boats. Step 43, and we've got lots of little photo etch mounting plates going along the side there, bow and stern. So I'm not quite sure what they are, to be honest. I wonder if that's where the mounting points are for the torpedo nets. There would be booms that would hang out and a torpedo net would be strung from them. I'm not sure if they have that in the 1918 version or not. I would imagine so. Anyway, step 44, and we're doing the same again on the other side. So a lot of little photo etch parts there. And the last step, step 45, is adding Trumpeter's generic stand, which never fits. And we've got a nameplate there which tells you the scale, unfortunately. But because it's all on one line, we can take that off and it'll look balanced. We can put a flag or something on there. Okay, that's the instructions. Let's have a look at the paint shout out first. So we've got quite a small sheet this time, smaller than usual. And what can you say? Hull red, hull grey, gloss black boot line. They've gone with dark sea grey, hull red, grey for what looks like the blast bags, sort of a slightly paler grey, and maybe for the ship's boats. I mean, to be honest, it's really, really difficult to work out what is painted what, because they put light on the computerized drawing, so you don't know whether you're doing that as the lighter grey as the turret sides there, or that should be the same. Is that just a light effect? So as always, I'm less than enamoured with a single sheet paint shout out. They haven't shouted out paint colours throughout the build. So for me, what you do with this is you fold it up into little squares and put it in your recycling and go do some research on what paint colours you should have on your ship. Right, let's have a look at this hull first, shall we? So 2 hull halves. The sprue connection points are interesting. They're on the top. When it comes to the top of the deck level here, the sprue gates come straight into contact with that. So you're cleaning up a top edge that's visible. And then underneath, where you're going to have a mating surface with the other half, they've put the sprue gate over the top of that. So that means that when you've cleaned that off, you don't have to clean anything on the hull, but it does mean you are clearing up an area where you're trying to join halves together. So you have to make sure that's really perfectly flat. But if they can do that there, why didn't they do that there? I'm guessing maybe because of the recess for the deck, possibly might have made that a bit challenging. Yeah, maybe. It would appear that all our location points are hexagonal rather than circular, which should make them a nice tight fit. And we can see that our hose pipes are already hollowed out, so that's interesting. Got some nice detail along the hull. We've got a marked out area for what would be degaussing cable, I think. And We have a little bit of distortion in the scuttles where the hull is falling away to the stern there. They're starting to get stretched out a little bit, so we will have to fill and re-drill those. Not so bad at the bow end, however. Probably get away with that at the bow. We've got some very fine moulded on cleats, which are all in good condition. A little bit of sink there. What have we got? Don't see a reason for it, but we certainly have it. And a little bit of sort of, we've not got a smooth curve, we've got sort of a jutted flat surface curve. We can see marked out areas for our bilge keel and placing our propeller shafts. And we've got lots of little holes there, which I'm guessing are bilge holes. It's actually quite nice, that. Yeah, I'm not unhappy with that at all. Okay, the first proper sprue out of the box is completely wrapped in this protective foam, which is something Trumpeter do around parts that they consider delicate. So let's have a look what we've got in here. So a lot of kit manufacturers wouldn't do anything particular with these parts. And you know, people like Revell and what have you would definitely put these in the same bag as another sprue because they're not massively delicate. What we've got is the bilge keels, which I've got to be honest, they look really quite badly deformed. Yeah. Now, it might be when they go on, they'll be fine, and they're supposed to be that shape. But at this point in time, they don't look like they're the right shape at all. But they are wafer thin, and I imagine that's what they've been protecting. There's a little bit of flash on that one. Yeah, a little bit of flash on both of them actually, but it is wafer thin. You can see how flexible that is. I can push that around easily. I'm going to stop before I break it. So yeah, I'd be interested to see what that looks like when it goes on. What else have we got? We've got some tiny parts here. We've got, that is lovely. We've got the exhaust there for the kitchens. That's very nicely done with a little mushroom vent style top there, very delicately moulded. Jack staff, we've got the A-frames moulded into the prop shaft ends there. The winches, the cable barrels are smooth, and then we've got the big capstan there. Anchors, really delicate. Shaft lines, they're going to be hard to clean up. I'm probably going to replace those with rod, brass wire or something like that, in fairness. Really lovely moulding on the mast arm there that's used for swinging out the ship's boats. You can just see, right through that. That's very nicely moulded, hollow there. Got yard arms that are nicely tapered. Some frames there for various bits. Some nice moulding going on there. Okay, this is the next sprue out, which is sprue C. Again, it had a little bit of foam wrap around it, this section here, and that's because we've got our main mast in there, which is absolutely as delicate as anything. It is so thin that cleaning that up is going to be a real challenge, and there is a little bit of flash on there. We've got ejector pin tabs to remove So that will be a very precision job, or again, you may want to replace with a bit of brass wire or copper wire or something like that. Most of the sprue is the 2/2 dividers, and although we saw the holes in the hull as hexagonal, the pins for them are actually circular, as you can see. We've got some tiny parts on here. We've got some more yards, some piping or trunking of some type. We've got little search lamps, mushroom vents, tiny little cable reels. All of it fairly crisply moulded. I'm not seeing much in the way of flash on the parts, mainly on the sprue area around it, which we don't care about. And then we've got this little slide moulded building at the end, which has got door moulded in, window with a big eyebrow above it. And on the other side, it's got a couple of scuttles there that we can see. So, yeah, nicely detailed. Nice collection of small little parts there that are going to go on our decks. Okay, just want to show you this. We've got 2 sprues in a bag, and what they've done, I think the sprues are identical, D and D, yeah, 2 of the same sprues in the same bag, and they've simply put a wafer of foam between them to protect the parts. Trumpeter do their packaging with a lot of thought. They do that really well. The packaging is a real highlight. Okay, so we have 2 of these, so let's have a look what we've got. First thing I'm noticing is quite a bit of heavy seam on these guns. That's interesting. As I'm taking this out of the bag and unwrapping this, I'm listening to Nigel's modelling bench, who's just released a bonus Lancaster video just talking about sprue seams and part seams and mould seams and how they're created. And then I take this out and I look at this and I think, yep, that's a sprue that's not been lined up properly when they've formed it, because we have some real heavy seam on those guns there. Now, they do have, I don't think they're slide moulded. They do have open bores, but they do look a little bit thick. I think the walls of the guns need to be thinned out a little bit. I'm sort of thinking maybe metal replacements might be the way to go there. But everything else seems quite crisp, so but we can see quite a bit of flash here, so it's almost like the 2 moulds didn't get enough pressure right at the end, at this edge here. But yeah, but your davits are beautiful, really nice and crisp. We've got all these booms here, various little lifting booms, a big row of lamps. They're solid, they've not got clear parts in them, but paint them chrome and give them a gloss varnish, you'd never know. And we've got all those little pressure vents or whatever they are for the top of the gun turrets there. Some propellers, ships, boats. They're really nice, actually. Importantly, there is no ejector pin marks on the inside, which is quite a common feature. So nice to see we've not got that to tackle. Lots of tiny little search lamps and bits and pieces. And then the gun turrets themselves have got really nice detail on the top. And little ladders moulded on the front. There's no rivet detail particularly, which I would have expected possibly. And they're quite flashy as well. So yeah, it definitely seems to be an area here that didn't quite get as much pressure as the rest of the tool did. You can see some fairly heavy seam around this sort of area here. But some lovely parts. I mean, all the deck guns are really beautifully detailed. I have no issues with any of this at all. Really nice. Okay, next out is sprue A, and no foam wrapping on this. We've got the breakwater there. We've got some steel deck section there. Some of those little elliptical, I'm not quite sure what they are, buildings for want of another word, that we saw being put together. That's them there. Some of the bigger ships, boats and launchers, and again, the detail in them is nice. You've got deck planking and what have you, and no ejector pin marks. There's no windows marked out on the launchers. You'd have to paint those in, and there is no deck marking on the launchers either, but we could do something with that. We've got what I thought was a skylight, but now I'm seeing it looks like maybe floats or something like that. That's that part that needs the square drill bits. And unfortunately, the upper section, or actually this will be the lower section, that'll face down towards the deck. But we've got a lot of ejector pin marks in that bit. So we will have to do some work on that. We've got the bottom of the funnel tops there, and the funnels themselves are quite nicely moulded. We've got the little runs going up them where you've got the cables for mounting your block and tackle for painting and maintenance. Yeah, all nice and crisp. That looks okay, doesn't it? Okay, sprue H, and well, the main part on here is the display stand nameplate, which is very bowed actually. It's yeah, it's banana in there. You need to take that off unless you particularly need to be told what scale it is. You need to take that off and do something else with the top space. The moulding of the lettering is actually quite light, so it actually makes it quite difficult to paint that. What you really want is it to be a bit more pronounced so that you can paint the lettering and then just paint over everything else and skim over it and just wipe that paint off. But this is so low that it's going to be difficult to do that. And in fact, your border is at least twice, maybe 3 times higher than the lettering. So that's going to make it difficult as well. To go in and paint that with a fine brush yourself individually, at the very least it's tedious, but yeah, for me that doesn't work, and I might be looking at doing something a bit different for the nameplate. The rest of it, we've got a roof there to one of those buildings and some form of cylindrical building which has a ladder on there, a couple of booms, and then this looks like decks and buildings around the mast area. If I'm right, I think that's the tripod holes. And then we've got some form of deck there with walkways or something like that. Not really sure. Don't remember seeing it in the instructions. And the life rafts look really quite nice. Short under paint and a bit of wash, they'll look gorgeous. Sprue J, and we've got more ship's boats. Nice and crisply moulded. Again, no windows on there, so all for painting in, and no deck texture particularly, but lots of detail otherwise. And then we've got 2 slide moulded buildings, solid windows, but I'm not too bothered about that. Quite nicely done though, nice crisp moulding of those window frames. There's nothing else on there. This one has some fairly basic doors. It's got a bit distorted in the back, that. So part of another construction. There's obviously bits to go on that. You can see there, I think something sticks out of there and something clearly mounts on top. There'll be some form of deck that goes either side when you look at the positioning of those doors. And you can see the windows there, and the ship's boats. Nothing wrong with them. Okay, sprue G, and we've got the main part here is this deck area, which has got some lovely planking on it, with staggered butt joints. Appears to be a 3-4 shift pattern. We've got a very finely moulded splinter shield there. It's got no support brackets on it, and there's some steps there as well. Interesting. Some lockers, ready use or something like that, moulded into the deck, and a little bit of gussets moulded in at the bottom there. Then we've got another deck section that's a bit of an odd shape, and not quite sure what that is, but they look like two halves of something or other. Then we've got the base of the main mast, which is nice, not got much in the way of seam on that, which is good to see. We've got the two little steel wing decks there, another deck section like the one we saw on the last sprue actually. Really finely moulded. Some boat chocks there, and some small parts, cable reels, so on and so forth, and some lockers. And then we have a building of some type which has windows and what looks like a very tall, thin door. Sure, that's not right. And there's another one on the side. Looks a little odd, that somehow. Slide moulded. Construction of some type. But the decks look lovely, don't they? You could paint them up and they'd look great. Although you can now get a wooden deck for this. You couldn't for a long time, but you can now. Artworks have one out. That's sprue G. Right, that's the sprues dealt with. I'm interested to see what this looks like, because this is the main superstructure of the ship, and you can see there that they have wrapped some parts of it in foam. So let's investigate that a bit further. Well, I can see why that's wrapped in foam. And what we've got is a slide moulded deck and superstructure, and my word, look how thin that is. It's like plastic card thin. That is so. I mean, that wasn't wrapped in foam, interestingly, but these bits were, and you can see why. Wowzers. They are super thin. If they could get the splinter shields that thin, that would be lovely. But actually, the splinter shields there are really that thin. That is very, very good. The deck texture is nice. It's overscale, but it always is. No matter what ship you get, it's always overscale. Otherwise, you wouldn't see it. And we've got a 4-butt shift pattern on those. The skylights are all closed, as in the steel shutters are closed down on them. We've got chain bonnets that are really nicely moulded. Need opening up with a drill if that takes your fancy, but it's doable. Hose pipe openings are nicely done. Possibly need a little slim down on the slip into them, but nicely done. And then we've got location points for the chimneys, and then on the sides we've got ladders, we've got some closed hatches, scuttles with all the nice eyebrows moulded on, some loading doors there of some type. That is really, really well done. That's one of the finest moulded pieces I've ever seen on a ship model. That is proper lovely. Look how thin that is. I am impressed with that. Really nice. Our last plastic piece, with the exception of this stand, which is generic, so I'm not really going to show you that. It's the same as all the others. Is this main deck section, which has the openings here for the turrets already moulded in. We've got a nice moulded deck, again with the 4-shift butt pattern, so that's common all the way through, so that's good to see, because sometimes they mix it up when they really shouldn't, so it's nice to see that that's done right. All these little countersunk holes are for those little photo etch pieces to go in, so that they are, there's quite a lot of those to do, but they'll look nice once in place. We've got some lockers and again more closed skylights, all with nice little details on. There's nothing on those two, but everything else appears to have some form of detail on top, which is really nice to see, and once you put a wash over that will really stand out. Some very fine moulding. Yeah, very crisp, all looks really nice. And when you consider that this kit came out in 2014, I think they've done a really good job of that. Some of the kit will date back to a little bit earlier than that, because the 1918 version was the last release of it. I think it was originally out in 2012. And then the last version came out in 2014, so they just add parts for the 2015 version and then the 2018. So this is the last of 3 kits they did on the Dreadnought. Right, let's have a look at the decals and the photo etch. So these are the decals. We've got 2 flags, which you can have in square or fluttering, and then 2 decals for the name, which I'm guessing goes on the hull, but I'm sure we had a photo etch part for that. No depth markers, no signal flags, no coat of arms for the front, nothing. Rubbish, as always. Right, then we have 4 frets of photo etch and then a little bag with some chain in. Let's deal with the chain first. The chain is some form of copper alloy, and actually the links are slightly elongated, which looks quite authentic as stud chain. So I quite like those. Just needs a bit of chemical black, and you've got yourself a good chain. So yeah, no problem with the chain at all. It's nice that they put that addition in. When we come to the photo etch, we've got 3 different types of fret here, across 4 frets, these 2 being the same. So I'll show you this one first. A lot of what we've got are these little round discs that are going on the deck, and we've got all these tiny little bits here. I can't remember what they were. Got various different ladders, supports for the jackstaff, and the Dreadnought name for the stern, so I knew we'd seen that. Some gussets and supports for bits and pieces, and some hatches. Nothing wrong with that at all. All very nice, nice additions. Then when we come to this one, we've got the parts there for the funnel caps. We've got all sorts of different ladders, including the boarding ladders, and we've got some other ladders and gussets and rudders for the ship's boats, a couple of platforms. Yeah, and that makes up what you get on there. This is the last of the photo etch, which is railings, and it's railings for some parts of the superstructure. But you've got nothing for around the deck, the main deck, at all. Now, if they're putting that in, why have they not bothered putting the rest of the deck in? So the model's not complete. What we've got is nice. It's all designed to fit the parts, so it should go on easy enough. And there's never anything wrong with trumpeter railings. Just haven't got enough of them. Problem is, the HMS Dreadnought from 1918 has never had a photo etch set, dedicated photo etch set, released for it. Now, to be undeterred, that means you've got to buy into something else. So let me show you what your options are. So if, like me, you're not going to be deterred by a simple little fact that there isn't a photo etch set for your model kit, these are your options. You can buy into the white Ensign model photo etch, which is actually designed for the Zvezda kit, or you can buy the Edward etch set that's designed for the 1915 version of the Trumpeter kit. There will be differences with the 1918 kit, but both of them should give you some of the generic stuff you need, like railings for around the deck. Now, clearly, before diving into this photo etch, if you're going to use the Edward set, and only the Edward set, then you need to do your research to see what's appropriate and what's not for the 1918 version. And what you basically get is one threat of etch. You get some railings, which is good to see. You get railings of different types, some of which have got davits in. You've got a lot of stuff for the ship's boats there, ladders. You've got stud chain, which you can use to replace the chain supplied in the kit. We've got some plastic buildings being replaced by photo etch, which is interesting to see because that's going to give you open windows. We've got some detail to go onto some of the lockers, and we've got small number of watertight doors to go where we've got door openings. And those doors look a better size than the tall ones that we saw on the plastic parts. We've got a replacement breakwater and lots of little gussets and some other bits and pieces, including new funnel caps, interestingly. I didn't see anything particularly wrong with the ones supplied. So again, you've got to just check, but quite a lot of this will be generic to both of the 15 and 18 version. Let's have a quick look at the instructions. So in instructions, we've got some additional bits for the main guns, and you definitely need to check your references for those, although these front ladders probably look right with the handrails on. They'll look quite nice. And I know that on one of the kit parts we had some photo etch wings going on, so these probably replace and improve those. We have all the individual pulleys to go around the outside of the funnels, which is really, really nice, and that's these items here. So glued on, they'll look really authentic. Means sanding the funnels smooth, but that's not an issue at all. The photo etch for the funnel tops, which might be an improvement, so that's worth looking at. That's not likely to have changed. And then we've got some various ladders. Now, we've got ladders included, so that gives you two bites of the cherry, and you can pick which ones you prefer the look of. You've got some watertight doors, which might be an improvement on the originals, and then we've got possibly improved railings on the kit parts with all these davits. The bridge building there seems to be an improvement. Replacement ladders for some of the moulded on ladders. And then we've got some detail for the deck guns, and that's going to be the same for the deck guns. So a lot of this common to the 2018 part. We've certainly seen that as a plastic part, so we know we've got a lot of usable parts in here. As we flip over, we've got some little steps that are going on, and we've seen moulded in steps there, so that's nice. We can remove those. They're bound to be the same. Ship's boats, again, that's bound to be the same. If you want to go into that detail, easy enough to do. Some hooks for the davits and some rigging there, photo etched rigging for those booms that we saw. So that's nice. Replacement ladders and railings for the decks on the main mast. And we've got foot loops there for the yard arms. A little hatch, entrance hatch for getting onto this deck. I imagine that pretty much all of that we can use in the 2018 version. And then we've got modifications to the lamps. No reason why we couldn't use those. There is some block and chain there for the base of the main mast. Well, that's unchanged, so I imagine that the arrangement's unchanged. Again, it's worth checking, but I think we can use that. We've got replacement skylights, which is interesting. So we could either replace them or we could use the photo etch to go on top of the moulded on plastic ones just to improve the look. So that's nice. Breakwater, there wasn't anything really wrong with the plastic one, but if you wanted to replace it with etch, at least this has got all the gussets on, which will look quite nice. And various other little details that go around some of the cleats and things, which again, almost inevitably will be unchanged. So I think an awful lot of this we could keep, and then we've got railings to go all the way around the deck areas. We've got hose pipe covers. I wondered if they should have covers. There's a little platform there for the stern and various replacement skylights again. So there's actually quite a bit of detail going on for quite a small threat of parts, really, as far as a ship etch set goes. You actually get more out of it than it looks. So yeah, I don't have any concerns about most of that. I think most of that is common to both versions of the ship. Now, the white Ensign set, the way they usually work is they'll cover all variations of the ship in their photo etch offering. Now, although it's for the Zvezda kit, it's the same scale. So as long as they've all done the same measurements, it all should fit, right? So let's have a look at how much photo etch we get with white Ensign. The answer is a whole lot more. We get 2 large frets. And I'm already seeing the benefit of the white Ensign over just having the photo etch set from Edward. So if we take that one to one side for a minute and have a look at this one, without even looking at the instructions, I can see we've got a load of watertight doors there. So and bits and pieces which are going to definitely be worth investing in, improving the look of some of the plastic ones, although the Trumpeter ones were really quite good, so you might feel like you don't need to use them. But some of them have extra detail on. Again, we've got replacement structures, and actually these look nicer than the Edward ones, so they might be my preference. I've got a ship's wheel, which we've not seen before. I've got 2 different starfish, which look an improvement on everything else we've seen. We've got photo etched deck.
which again looks nicer than the plastic deck. It's more in scale, even though it doesn't have a shift pattern there's no deck butts. And we've actually got a building there that appears to be wooden slats, so we'd have to check our references. That may well have been replaced. It'll probably tell us in the instructions. And then we have what looks to me to be a steel deck replacing what I said was a very nice looking wooden deck of the plastic parts. So it could be that the wooden deck got replaced for a steel deck at some point. So that's interesting to see. We've got some propellers there for the ship's boats, more ship's wheels. Again, I'm guessing for the ship's boats. We've got the life buoys for the side of the ship, which Edward haven't done and the Trumpeter haven't done. Loads of hatch covers of different types. And some small platforms with deck on. And then they've done the Dreadnought as individual letters. Some really, really nice photo etch on there, as always with white ensign. And we have chain, and we've got brake chain. So the chain's finer. No way about it, that is better etch than the Edward etch. So it gives us lots and lots of detail that we can add there, more than what photo has been added by Edward. Let's have a look at the second fret. So the second fret gives us a load more railing. As ever, photo etch railing from white ensign is always more delicate, and as a result we've actually got a little bit of damage there on one. That's not uncommon because it is so delicate. We've got some perforated deck. We've got some very nice rigging with the blocks there that Edward has done separately, but we've got that as a photo etched option with the rigging there. Pulleys, blocks and pulleys and hull and hooks there for some of the davits. We've got loads of those little deck rings, so we've got some spares. We've got some nice little davits there. Ladders, what looks like boat booms. Nice yard arms there with the rigging points on them. Very nice. And then all of those are torpedo net tops. Very nice as well. Not quite sure what that is, but I'm guessing it's to do with the secondary armament, the deck guns. And we have some railings there with canvas behind them, which is always a nice addition. And another set of funnel tops and some generic ladders that you can cut to length, which is another common white ensign way of working. Let's have a quick look at the instructions. So as always with white ensign instructions, we get a nice picture, we get a little bit of read before you do, and an introduction. And this is 2011 etch set. Then we get our two sprue maps, which tells us exactly what everything is, which is great. It tells you what the lockers are. It doesn't just say locker hatch, it says, you know, small vent hatch or whatever. So you know exactly what everything is. So it's a great way of learning what's on a ship, or this particular ship at least. So if we move on from the sprue maps. So having quickly just read the front of these instructions, it does say that other parts are included in the set to assist the model if they wish to model it being modified to appear a different time period to that of the kit in the box. Now, I'm not sure what period the Zvezda 1 is. I'm gonna guess 1906 when she was released, so it will no doubt tell us. So chart house and bridge front. So we've got photo etch replacements, photo etch doors, compass platform with various different bits to go on. Very nice. More buildings with railings and separate doors, which means you can glaze it. And there's lots of written instructions. I'm not going to go through it all, but we have more additional bits for the guns. So we can add as much detail as we wish to those. We have replacement platforms, which will look a little bit more in scale than the plastic ones for our mast. And replacement or foot stirrups and things to go on the yard arms. So some nice detail there for both the masts. Deck plate going on and building up the starfish. Then we've got the rigging for the base of the mast tripod. Funnel alterations which include, so we've not seen any gangways or anything like that on the funnels, so that's interesting. We've got some nets, small or large, to go on there. So we'd have to understand period of time, I guess, for those. And then lots of railings. We've got the stern platform, life buoys, or what are called night life buoys, and their racks. Anchor chain relocation, we'd have to see if that applied to the trumpeter kit or not. Another set of boarding ladders, and those bits go between the davits. So yeah, they are for rope ladders that hang off the davits. So we've not seen that applied by anybody before. And then we've got torpedo net shelf locations. Okay, have to look at that in detail, but we've got lots of those little bits and pieces there. Then we've got hatch and skylight locations, gives you the number and what to put them on. So some of the stuff that didn't have any detail on the top, and it was only a few of them, we've got detail for now. So we've got options and main deck railing locations. So different numbered railings for different areas. So that's good. Skylight assembly. So we've got photo etch, closed, opened in various stages, and that's it. So there you have it. Trumpeters 1 to 350 scale HMS Dreadnought 1918, as she was at the end of her working life. What are my thoughts? I have to be honest, I think Trumpeter have done a really good job of this. When they do it well, they do it really well. And you can't take away from them the fact that they are quite prolific when it comes to releasing ship kits. And for me, they do it better than anybody else when they get it right. When they get it wrong, they tend to get it very wrong. And we've certainly seen some real bad mistakes from Trumpeter over the years in some of their kits, but I didn't see anything in this. The biggest low light is the fact that they haven't included railings for around the main decks. Otherwise, I think they have captured Dreadnought in 1918 really quite well. Highlights, there's some really fine, clean, crisp, detailed moulding in a number of places, not least this superstructure that goes on the main deck here. They've captured lots of detail on the bulkhead sides, really, really thin splinter shields. So it was a thing of beauty. Very nice rendered deck. Really, really nice. there is some detail that you can see in this picture that is not included on the ship model, such as railings and some of the bits around the lifeboats and what have you. And as always, there is no rigging plan, so that's another low light. And you know, I've got to mention it, the decals are rubbish. Trumpeter's decals are the worst decals you can get for a ship kit, and you have to go some mileage to have the worst decals, because your competition's all pretty rubbish as well. So I've got to say, I like this kit, and when I first bought it, sort of bought it on a whim, and I've sort of forgotten about it ever since. And there's other model ship kits that I've got that I see as a bit more glamorous than this in some way. But having looked at this kit now in detail like we just have, I'm actually really looking forward to building it. It's got some real guts about the moulding, and it really is going to come to life and look the part, I think. Inevitably, you're going to have to chuck some photo etch at this, not least if you want to put some railings on it. And for me, the ship is not complete without the railings. And it's interesting, I was having a conversation recently with someone who said, actually, I just want to build plastic. I don't want to do the photo etch, that's above my skill set. So when they swap out plastic parts for photo etch, that becomes a challenge and puts me off the kit. And I've never really thought of it like that. So if you think about a Tamiya kit with all its horrible plastic ladders and stuff, for some people, that's the right level. So you don't get plastic ladders and things like that in a trumpeter kit. You get photo etch. But I don't believe that they give you anything that's particularly advanced. They sometimes give you some stuff that's a little bit fiddly, but not advanced stuff really. So having said all that, if you're going to buy a photo etch set for this, clearly of the two that I've highlighted as possibilities, the white Ensign set is clearly the way to go. It's got pretty much everything that the Edward set has, and to a better standard, and it's got more. So for me, the white Ensign set is the one to have. However, I think in addition to what you've seen, you can now get a wood deck for it from Artworks, and that might be worth looking at. And Edward do some other photo etch that might well be of use for this, such as international signal flags, Royal Navy flags, and life rings. I hope that was useful if you're interested in buying this 1918 version of the ship that changed everything. Take care, everyone. Enjoy your modelling, and I will see you very soon.